hi everyone. I'm Hans Paul, CEO and co-founder at Speed Legal, and this is the second episode of the Global LegalTech Roadshow. And with us, we have Federico and Adam from Loki.code. Welcome, guys.
Hey,
Hi.
nice to meet you.
Great. So I'll give a brief introduction about this event and the organizers, and then happy to hear about a brief introduction about yourself. So this event is co-hosted with Sweet Legal Tech, which is an organization that helps companies foster legal innovation by doing education and also consultancy on the integration between legal tech startups and corporations. And thank you for organizing this event because they started this actually in Italy, and then we are helping them now. We're together in bring this global with companies from San Francisco, from Asia, and from Europe as well. And on the other side, Speed Legal is also co-hosting this event. Speed Legal is a legal tech startup based in San Francisco, and we are using automation, basically AI, machine learning, deep learning, to extract key information from contracts and highlight the key risks. Basically, we make it easy to understand what's within the contract before signing the contract. And yeah, happy to give the word now, the stage to Federico for a brief introduction, and Adam as well.
Thank you, Hans. Well, first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity of being here, talking, to you and to all the audience of these most interesting topics. So a little about myself. I'm Italian as well. I grew up in nearby Como, so in Lombardy. I studied in Milan, and I graduated in 2016. And the same year, I studied a PhD. And back then, crypto was not as big as it is nowadays. Everything was so new for me as well. So it was a real journey within the rabbit hole. I finished my PhD in 2020, and now I'm at Stanford, where I'm finishing a master in legal studies. And I've been studying, let's say, from the theoretical standpoint, it's what they call the contract incompleteness, that boils down to contract designing. And technology, of course, when it comes to smart contracting, is a big bet in terms of contract designing, because ideally the future will be like that. Lawyers maybe wonder, do I need to code this clause here in this contract? Should I not? I came to know Adam and the rest of the team last year. We met in a very strange way, but great things sometimes happen in a strange way. And I was immediately interested in what they were doing, because going through this journey into crypto, I realized that, as you mentioned earlier, having things that are simple, especially when it comes to contracting, is very, very, very hard. So I thought that the idea that Adam and the others were super interesting, and so I joined that. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Federico. Thank you very much.
Cool. So quick introduction about me. So I'm Adam. I would say my experience is not so much on the legal side, but more on the go-to-market and the engineering side. So Federico has primarily been, given his experience and tenure at Stanford, he's been primarily giving us the necessary legal guidance. But from my perspective, I got a degree in computer science. I've always been an engineer at heart. And for the past, I want to say 6 to 7 years, I've been running different solutions engineering, or I've been doing solutions engineering at various startups. Just to give a couple names to them in case people may have heard of these in the past, but Signal Effects was one of them. That was a successful one that was acquired by Splunk, which is a pretty huge data analytics company here in the Bay Area. And then I've also worked at Stanford, as well as I currently work for a development SDK company called error monitoring company called Sentry. So just a quick purview of my past experience. But then exactly how did I start working on what we call Loki.code with Federico? It was due to getting involved in crypto at an early time, but then really getting interested on smart contracts and seeing how this can impact our lives, both in the traditional legal space, but then for some of those use cases where you could have purely digital assets on the blockchain and just write these contracts or write these applications to work with these digital assets was quite interesting to me. But basically, by working with Federico, we quickly realized, that it was quite daunting to learn everything to start building these applications, right? And this is coming from someone from a technical background. Like, we wanted to prototype and experiment with different ideas, and it just required opening up a huge can of worms of complexities, right? We had to learn about gas fees and test nets and the different languages that are out there, which blockchain is best suited for best use cases. And we quickly realized that, no wonder why smart contracts haven't really been used in the legal space yet, right? Because just studying law and being very proficient in being a lawyer or within the legal space is hard enough as it is, right? It's challenging as it is. And then on top of that, you layer on all this complexities of smart contracts. And we thought there must be an easier and better way of introducing this to people in this space. And so this is basically the beginnings of the solution that we've worked on. We'll probably talk more about it during the call and maybe even do a quick demo at the end. But that's about it. And then quick title, I guess, for this Loki company we've been working on now for close to 2 years, a year and a half, I would say. I would say I'm definitely an engineer at heart. I've been doing a lot of the engineering work with a couple of colleagues. But I would say I'm loosely the CEO only because I'll have probably the most go-to-market experience given my past experiences at startups in the Bay Area. But that's pretty much everything on my side. I'll pass it back to Hans then.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for this great introduction. You spoke about blockchain, crypto, and smart contracts. So the first question that arises is, well, when I talk to people in this space, there is always usually a funny story on how they get into crypto. So I would like to hear your story on how did you get into this decentralization aspect of technology.
I can start, which is a very easy and straightforward. So my thesis at the law school back in Italy was about the regulation of the banking crisis. Banks were bailed out, and back then, especially in Europe, there was this rule called bail-in, which was quite the opposite of bailout. Basically, bondholders and other stakeholders getting involved in the bankruptcy of banks. And while typing, banks failure, blah, 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 the more I did that, the more I discovered that there was these new things like fintech and Bitcoin will, disrupt them, blah, blah. And I finished my thesis. I decided to start this PhD. Then I had to figure out what to write at least design my dissertation on. And I thought that it was 2016, so it was more than a year before the ICO bubble that happened at the end of 2017, early 2018, if I remember correct. So I said, this is the future. I mean, I see there's just so much potential in here that I want to learn more, because I'm sure that I will be able to get something out of this. And decentralization was a very interesting research area, because we have come from a world where everything is so institutional based, and there are these new coders saying, yes, but we can redesign the way finance works in exactly the opposite way. And that was super fascinating for me. I would say initially purely from an intellectual standpoint. And then, as I said, it was a real rabbit hole. And, first I had to study Bitcoin, which was part of the crypto world already back then. And then Ethereum came to existence. And then there was the first DAO hack and all these stuff. And of course, everybody was talking about smart contracts and, that things could be very decentralized, that finance could be decentralized. Back then, DeFi was on the way to become what it is right now. And so my journey was quite straightforward. I think I was one of those lucky guys living exactly in the right moment, of our existence to be able to jump on this, to surf this wave, and basically to live crypto from the inner side, which was one of the most exciting things of my late 20s, I would say.
So thanks to your thesis and thanks to Google as well, to the search,
Yeah.
to you searching on Google. Yeah, nice. Adam?
Yeah. So I would say there's a couple of ways I was introduced to this space and got interested. I would say, and the interesting thing, it was not even owning crypto initially. It was just due to some personal frustrations I had with the current system and current way of doing things that kind of led me into exploring this. So I would say the first one was when I went to school, like a lot of people, I had to take loans out to go to school. And fortunately, I was able to get a decent job out of college, was able to start paying off my loan. But the issue that I had was the fact that I'm paying, the interest payments, and I'm successfully paying the amount that's required from me and by the banks. And the issue was that I wasn't getting like any kind of discount, or I wasn't getting any kind of like good borrowing treatment. Similar to like if you are a good driver, you might get a discount on your insurance, right? So it just kind of was confusing to me that not only were the banks not incentivizing good borrowing behavior, like you would think that the banks would want you to be paying your loan off, right? But then on top of that, the second issue was that they didn't even make it easy. So instead of making it where you could programmatically, be paying off like 3 times your minimum payments every month, I had to go into my bank account at the beginning of every single month. I have to like leave a little sticky note to myself to remind myself. I have to go into my bank account and pay the loan off every single month. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why isn't there a better way of doing this? So part of it was frustration with the existing financial system. And this is what allowed me to start, experimenting with, well, I wonder if this was, let's say, a crypto loan that was given to students. I wonder what kind of financial products could be created. But then outside of that, how did I start getting deeper into the legal space was that I was fortunate to buy my house recently, a year ago. And there was a bunch of probate attorneys that were telling me, oh, you want to make sure that your assets are within like a last will, and you can make sure that everything happened, that your assets are able to be cleanly transferred if anything were to happen to you. And I was thinking, well, my house is one thing, but I have all of this crypto now. What happens with the crypto? Like, I don't want my family to go through I'm sure all of us have seen those people who, they owned a ton of Bitcoin, but they lost their password or their key to identify themselves and to access their assets. And so, they lost millions and millions of Bitcoin. And I'm like, I don't want that frustration to be done to my family or whoever that, might inherit this crypto if something were to happen to me. And I'm like, surely there must be some kind of legal contract that could be made for this. And of course, there wasn't. So that's from a legal side, kind of how I started wanting to explore what's going on that side as well. So that's kind of the two main ways I got introduced into this space.
Nice. And when was that, Adam?
The buying the house. So that was a year and a half ago is when I started exploring that. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're talking about legal, and we're talking about contracts and the blockchain, and therefore smart contracts, right? So maybe for the listeners, maybe you guys can give a brief introduction of what's a smart contract, and maybe then start talking about how they really can take the place of real contracts. So starting from the basics, I would say, as some of you may know or have heard of use cases of smart contracts used to automate, basic scenarios such as, there is a concert or a catastrophic event, and you paid for that event, you should get the money back, right? And that you shouldn't go and ask someone to get the money back. Everybody agrees that there is an event happening, and there should be some APIs releasing the money and these kind of things. And this can be done also, of course, with in the insurance sector and so forth. But before going that in depth, I would say let's start with the basics maybe, and then go a bit deeper with your knowledge and expertise, guys.
I think I can take it. And probably the basics is, as they say, smart contracts are neither smart nor contracts. That's like the basics I had to deal with at the very beginning. Just joking, but to make things very, very simple, the way I see smart contracts, they are just software working on a decentralized computer, on a worldwide decentralized computer, potentially. So the interesting part of this software is that it automates the transfer, the exchange of value from, let's say one party, let's say one node, one party, one unit to another. I would also add, smart is a word that we have been using for many, many things in this new digital era. We have to be clear that it's like saying a smartphone, right? So it's a piece of software that works pretty much like any other software in a computer. But the only difference that the computer is working on top of the internet and in a decentralized way, right? If you take this approach, I would say that things become very, very simple, because as you can code anything through your computer, you can code anything else that you're able to on a blockchain. Then if we want to go, deep inside the history of smart contracts and whatever, the very first idea was theorized by Nick Szabo in the mid-90s, and since he is a lawyer, his idea was, let's try to embed the contractual language into software so that the counterparty risk becomes very, very costly for the counterpart. I mean, for the party, not the counterpart, or even impossible. And probably that was like the reason why I got so interested in smart contracting, because litigation grounds on counterpart risks occurring. To be honest, it took me some time before getting rid of that very first saying, well, smart contracts are neither smart nor contracts. as a lawyer, I had some sort of rejection initially towards, the understanding of smart contracts simply as software. If that helps, feel free to ask any other question if things are complex or
of course.
obscure.
Anyone within the audience, feel free to stop us, ask questions, text in the chat.
The thing is that all this infrastructure is very, very complex, and if we want to reconstruct it detail by detail, I think we sort of walk in a dead end route. And so let's get things as much simple as possible, because if we do that, then we understand that the blockchain, smart contract platforms are nothing but an evolution of computing. Super exciting one, but still we can deal with reusing all our categories based on our president's knowledge of what computers are.
Nice. So basically, smart contracts are, you said very well, legal language into software, and software working on a decentralized computer. And it's not super new. Someone called Nick Szabo, you said?
Yes.
Did it in
Yes.
the 90s, right? In the mid 90s.
Correct. Correct.
Interesting.
And to be precise, you said, so if we start from Nick Szabo's standpoint, smart contracts are legal contracts embedded into software. Mm-hmm. But of course, all the smart contracts that you have out there right now, not all, but some, maybe many of the smart contracts that are there on the blockchain right now, maybe not contracts, just because either you embed a real contract into a smart contract, and so you have all those conditions, legal conditions occurring for that thing to be called contract, or they're just a software, right? And this can be even confusing for many people. I think we need to be clear. It is software. When a lawyer says, I want to automate the execution of my contract through this software, then the smart contract has legal relevance. And that's where the legal tech community we are part of steps in.
So connecting to that, so are smart contracts legally binding, and where, in which states? There are some states, and can you tell us a bit more about this step, like the legally binding part and how that works?
So yes, so I'm from Italy, so I'm a civil lawyer. This is something that is important to specify. Things are pretty much the same in common law, but I want to speak firstly about the environment that I know the most. So are smart contracts legally binding? If they are contracts, yes. There is no reason why smart contracts cannot be legally binding. Consider that the only thing that is changing here when it comes to coding contracts is the formality, right? The form, the way that the contract is expressed through. But from a very technical and legal standpoint, you and I, Jans, can enter a contract even if we sign the agreement on a piece of stone. So the mean recording the contract doesn't matter that much. Of course, this has some further complications. It depends on what kind of contract we are entering, because as you may know, if you want to buy real estate in Italy, you have the notary, so the contract has to be done with public formalities that add complexities on top of the basic idea of what the contract is. But if we start from the bottom going up, the fact that a contract is written on a blockchain in a language that is not that is different from the one that we daily speak is not the issue at all. So there are no many limitations to envision that in the future smart contracting will be even more important than it is right now, even more spread, especially with the pace of digitization increasing year by year throughout society.
Nice.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense totally. So in which states we had a judge to recognize a smart contract as a contract? Like any case, any use case?
So no, like if we start from Italy, in 2019, if I remember correctly, they passed a law saying that basically a smart contract has the same legal relevance of an ordinary contract, and then they sort of delegated the guidelines to an agency that I actually not totally aware if it is already operating or not, but Italy is a nice example of this. If we step out the European Union and we enter the common law system, a couple of months ago, the UK Commission on Contracts said, we don't find any reason why the common law cannot internalize smart contracts. Basically saying, you can do contract, whatever the form of the contract is, because the common law doesn't have any problem with that. So it would be interesting to focus empirically on all the different countries, but from a very high level, I would say that in their own way, civil law jurisdictions and common law jurisdictions are able to keep up with this innovation in contracting. And yeah.
Interesting. So you're saying that there are already cases since 2019, for example, in Italy and in the US?
Yes, for sure in the US. I've been living in the US more than in Italy in the last years.
Probably before 2019, right, in US?
Probably. What I know is that there are cases of like even law firms engaging in smart contracts are becoming even more popular in the United States. There are some law firms in London that are also exploring smart contracting in the insurance sector, parametric insurance. So things are, developing, I would say, pretty much prudently, but still they are developing. And cases of using smart contracts are already out there. And then there are, people like us that want to make this process much more massive than it is right now.
Yeah, and we'll jump into it very soon. I remember Wyoming was one of the first in US, I guess, states to be very friendly in terms of smart contracts.
Yeah, so regulation in the United States has been trying to let's say adapting to this innovation. Wyoming also introduced legislation about DAOs, which are a very super hot topic these days on the West Coast. Even here at Stanford, it seems that everybody wants to do a DAO. And if we scratch what a corporation is, regardless of the way that the corporation is aimed at making money, profiting, and shareholders, all the stuff. But if you scratch the concept of a corporation, you can qualify a corporation as a nexus of contracts. And so what are DAOs? nexus of smart contracts that interact with also non-formalized agreements between people partaking within the community, right? So yeah, the smart contract ecosystem as a whole is becoming even more bigger, based on
Adam,
my point of view.
did you want to add something? I think you were saying something, or
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, so in terms of American use cases that I've found out so far is, so Wyoming definitely is one, but Nevada, so in Reno specifically, we've been talking. There's a pretty sizable blockchain presence there, and they were just mentioning to me that that there's a company, I'm forgetting the name right now, but they were able to get merit certificates now onto the blockchain. So there's, so that was pretty cool from a legal standpoint. And then the other thing is I know that, of course, what Federico said, New York is, I think probably has the most lawyers in the entire country right there. So of course they're going to have a bunch of legal tech use cases over there. But I would say in California, I know I was reading the other day there. I'm not sure if there's any kind of specific things that have been done just yet, but I do know that we are now starting to look at things that are being done on the blockchain as legally abiding. So I know that that is something. And the reason I know that is that a year ago, 2 years ago, before we met Federico, actually, we had spoken to Ian Coldren. So Ian was the majority assemblyman in the California state capitol. He probably, I think he was in office for 7 to 8 years, and only recently, probably the last 3 or 4 years before he left office, he became majority leader. And his claim to fame was he was basically writing law or working within the political sphere to basically legitimize and incorporate smart contract technologies within the legal system in state law in California. And so now he's acting more as an advisor, but he was running the blockchain advisory group within the state capitol. He was doing a bunch of things regarding how to legitimize and accept smart contracts within traditional law.
Hans, you also have to take into consideration that contracting, even on the blockchain, follows the pace at which the blockchain spreads. So now, Adam and I are in Northern California, but if you go a little bit southern in the LA area, NFT is the only thing, right? And smart contracts are starting to be used for the revenue and royalty management, all the IP, things related to NFTs. And probably a year and a half ago, many people were not even aware of an NFT is, right? Now with the ecosystem that is literally booming, pretty much like, the DAO that I was referring to earlier, then there's a need to, okay, but what if I want to exchange or put the NFT as a collateral to have a loan? All these things that are very easy for us to think about when it comes to the real world. Now we're just translating all this sort of information towards the digital world. And if we want to use the digital world that is developing on top of the blockchain, and smart contracts is the only way, because that's the way you interact. I mean, the way that people interact in that specific ecosystem.
Nice. I hope all of you are having fun, because this is very interesting. And if you have any question, let us know. We're coming toward the end, and I have a question for you guys, and that's something you're working on. So I guess you will tell us more about that. And so, how can we, create a smart contract without knowing much about Solidity, for example, or specific code? And yeah, I'd love to use my NFTs as a collateral for a loan, for example. So if you can show us how to do it, or how can we put our house as a collateral to get another house? You know? So this kind of use cases would be great, or whatever you want to show us or tell us.
I think Adam can help with the.
Yeah, so I was going to go
question.
ahead. Yeah, so I think the best way to explain it would be just to kind of show the solution. So let me go ahead, share my screen. Let me see if I have access to this. Yep, there we go. Can't share your screen. Might not have screen recording permission on your. Okay.
Okay. Let me give you the permission. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Perfect. You should have access very soon.
Let me try again. Can't share your screen. Might not have screen recording. Let me see if I go to system preferences. Let me just see if I can enable this real quick.
Cool. You're co-host now, so maybe try to rejoin the meeting. Just refresh the page, and we wait for you. And
okay. Yeah. In the meantime, maybe Federico could fill in with them.
Yeah, of course. So look, I can in the meantime, Adam joins us again. I can tell you something about my experience, which is very close to the question that you had. So how can I that I have like very low coding skills enter this world? Well, it's very hard. Now it's very, very hard because Solidity is a complex. I mean, it's a mix of high level, low level programming language, and you need to take care into consideration of many variables when you code in Solidity on Ethereum, let's say. So I sort of long for a solution that helped me to enter this world, even though I cannot commit myself to become a full stack engineer. And that's how we basically met. Adam, the rest of the team, and I met. And so the idea is that we are building on top of a Medium post that a MetaMask developer wrote back in 2018, and that we all read, even though we didn't know each other and we were spread in different parts of the world. And his suggestion was, but why not leveraging visual programming, which is a way of programming that was initially developed at MIT as a way to introduce kids to coding. Now, my feeling is that when it comes to coding on the blockchain, since the technology entered the world so disruptively, we are pretty much all kids within 6 and 10 years old, especially when it comes to lawyers. And so the idea is that we can use visual programming as a way to make the user more aware of each step that the smart contract has to do in order to get from A to B. So to make things even simpler, let's say that you have a contract and you want to automate a couple of clauses there. What we want to provide as a service is, without knowing the Solidity code, you have a medium, which is mostly visual, that helps you out to connect the blocks of the smart contracts one after the other, so that you know what you're doing, and at the same time you are coding. Now, if Adam is ready to show, I will leave the floor to him, because words are always more difficult than pictures, I think.
Yeah, especially when it's a visual language. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot more complicated use cases, kind of what Hans was saying regarding home buying and some other things that we could probably.
What happened? He left the conversation,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, we are looking
Sorry.
forward to seeing the use case very soon. But yeah, I was just saying about that use case. Um, uh, there is a lot of course, buzz about real estate and digitalizing real estate using the blockchain, right? And now we're talking a lot about metaverse. We had a conversation last week with a lawyer from Canada, and they basically bought some space in the metaverse, like the Central Land, which is one of the places, and they're starting to practice in law in the metaverse, which is funny. But of course, it's still pretty early stage, early ages. But
Well,
yeah.
think about this. Think about this. This lawyer, they bought this mansion, digital mansion in, one of those metaverse platforms that are out there, and we have a very rare NFT, right? So we can lend it to a museum, right? To a digital museum, sort of. And the museum can charge the entry fee to visit it and to see our NFTs, right? These are not very different from the kind of contracts that we do daily, either in Milan, Venice, Paris, New York, or anywhere else when we enter a museum, just because we want to see a piece of art. But all this process, when it comes to the metaverse, has to be coded, right? And that's where the issue steps in, which is, but coding all this is very, very complex, because coding is not an easy thing. And so what we envision is we need to provide a service that reduces the cost of development of coding on Ethereum as much as possible. And that's, the kind of solution that we are trying to give to the world.
What do you think about education and what you're offering? Like, do you envision that education will change? I mean, we see people learning languages, like coding languages at school these days, right? So
yeah, so this is a super great question. I think things are already changing. Like, I remember last summer, I got very interested in a summer school. I think it was taken in Zurich. It was open to anybody, like people with backgrounds, economics, social sciences, law as well. And the goal of the summer school was to, introduce people to smart contracting. Based on the things that I know regarding Italy, I know that there are some other professors at the university that are trying to at least prepare people to have a more, like lawyers, to have a more tech-savvy mindset in Florence, if I remember correctly. Then, of course, the more you go to places like Stanford, the more education is changing drastically because of this innovation. Smart contracting is, of course, a lot of, backend engineering, and this is sort of adding on top of the front end engineering, which is mostly AI based, which goes very close to the things that you do at the Speed Legal. And so, things are changing. I mean, here at Stanford, they talk about computation. They have been talking about computational law for a decade or so. So it's just, software is eating the word, and when it is the word, it is anything, legal education as well.
yes, interesting. Adam, will you be able to show us, as we are running a bit, we want to keep this conversation very kind of not too long, so hopefully you'll be able now.
Yeah, can you see my screen now?
Now, yes. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So let me go ahead and just do a quick 1 minute. Sorry that my computer literally froze there and I got kicked out of the meeting. Okay, so real quick, on the left is the nodes or the building blocks of the contract. Now the reminder here is you may have a traditional legal document that you might want to incorporate with smart contract functionality. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that the entire contract is not purely built in this. You know, you may have a legal contract that is transacting with, interacting with the contract, right? It might be like a vesting contract. You might be paying individuals, or what Hans was saying, you know, buying or selling a home. But a basic example would be consisting of going through here, and you could go ahead and click and drag different nodes out. Then you can also have this elements toolbox, which is basically kind of a global toolbox. Essentially, anything you put in here, your the contract you're building would be able to access this, or your program, I would say. And then the last thing I would just mention is we have templates, right? Because we assume that most lawyers are probably going to just want to use one of these templates and plug into it using their existing or traditional legal documents, right? We'll see a lot of legal tech solutions taking advantage of being able to plug into solutions like ours, such as OpenLaw. Not sure if Federico had mentioned that. So if you wanted to do, like, you could imagine there could be like a home buying bet here or a payments contract. In this case, I'm just going to do something like a number bet, just to kind of keep things super easy. So I don't know, let's say theoretically you would have some kind of traditional legal document around betting. I don't know, that could potentially come up. Well, you would want the ability to call upon, let's say, certain elements of this contract within your existing traditional legal document. And so for that, we went ahead and created a little snippet, a little example here of a number bet example. You can see we have the different functions, the conditional clauses here, or the conditional statements. So maybe the traditional legal document could be something like, you know, if this number bet, if the person is able to win this number bet, then they're basically going to provide ownership of their house, let's say, to the winner, right? So that the whole logistics of transferring the title of the house and all that stuff in the United States is its own separate activity in a traditional legal document. But the outcome of this number bet and how this number bet is executed is strictly done on the blockchain in the form of this contract. And of course, you can modify this based off your desire. But then lastly, what's cool about this is then if you wanted to go ahead and deploy this onto a blockchain of your choice, you wouldn't have to go and figure out how do I, get this finished product now onto the blockchain so that, my legal document would be able to interact with it. Instead, what you would be able to do is there would be a little button here that essentially you would click, basically this button, and you would be able to then deploy this onto the blockchain of your choice. In this case, we're supporting Solidity and Ethereum, but I hope that makes sense in terms of how we would basically be able to interact with your traditional documents. And the last thing I'll just mention is components. So we have different third-party integrations and libraries that we're pulling in. So you can imagine it could be like, for a number bet, we can make it a little bit more complicated. It could be like, I don't know, a stock bet, or it could be, weather betting. And of course, people wouldn't want to bet the whole house or something. But what I hope I tried to illustrate there, and hope it made sense, is how can people take existing traditional assets that are maybe not digital or not digitally native, and how would I be able to use that in combination with some kind of blockchain presence? And so that's basically what we're showing here. The blockchain presence is some kind of bet that's made on the blockchain, but you're using real assets as part of that.
Adam, maybe you want to show also the Solidity code.
Oh yeah, I mean, for those folks who might be a little bit more technical, definitely. So that's essentially what we're doing on our back end. We just kind of hide it from folks, but that's how we're able to take this and convert this onto and put this onto a blockchain. And so again, if Federico didn't mention this already, where we're going with this, a couple of things. So imagine being able to step through the logic. So we're calling this a visual debugger. Right now, we have this in a very crude form. So essentially, if you want to plug in an address of, let's say, another contract or variable or something like that, you could go ahead and put in something like test address, right? And then start pounding in different values. And you can see right there, we're already showing to the user, hey, this address doesn't make sense. This address doesn't needs to be filled in with a proper value here. This is one way we're doing this, but of course we're building upon this to basically make sure that as someone who's not technical, you should be able to take this and be able to get a clear idea of what the logic here is. Now, again, I think Federico may have mentioned this, but just to kind of reiterate, is that a lawyer, at the end of the day, we see lawyers becoming more and more technical. So a lawyer might be doing this, but another individual is this rise of legal engineers, legal aides who have a little bit of coding experience, maybe not a ton, but they should be capable to kind of assisting on the legal side and putting together this kind of smart contract functionality that could then be added to your traditional legal document. So we call it kind of a hybrid contract, but I'll pause there in case anyone has any questions, comments. Otherwise, back to you, Federico or Hans. And once again, sorry for that technical difficulty.
Is there any question from the audience? Yeah, so I think it's pretty well easy to understand. It's basically drag and drop pieces of code, and then you automatically create the code on the background, and that code can be pushed into the blockchain, as you said, by clicking one button, and would be the testnet, which is a test blockchain, or would be like the real, the production blockchain, which is
Ethereum, exactly. Example, right? Like at the end of the day, the testnet would be where people could play around with the logic and step through and make sure everything works properly before they incorporate it as part of your traditional document, legal document. Correct.
Nice. Yeah, well, I'm very excited about what you're building, and I hope that we can, maybe integrate it with different platforms such as Speed Legal. And yeah, that looks very cool. If there is no other question, I would say I would thank you so much, guys, for joining today. I mean, all of you, and thank you for the speakers, first of all, Adam, Federico, and
of course.
And I will see you at the next event that we have next week. Every Thursday we have an event where we discuss about similar topics. And thank you again, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye.